Hey there, friends. What's up? Kevin here from the MSOTD Rocks YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be reviewing the third album from this metalcore outfit out of Pennsylvania that I have talked to on the Chord Progression podcast. This is our review of Mystic Auras by Ascent Like Wolves. Before we get started, though, please follow MSOTD Rocks on places like Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. On those places, we post a 30-second song a day feature where you can get in the know with a lot of these different bands that are well-known in the scene, along with the up-and-comers and emerging bands as well. Help expand your musical horizons and get you in contact with people that also like the music. We also post many different questions on our social media sites so that you can get in contact with us. We ask you questions, just comment, we'll comment right back. We also post anytime anything gets released. On our Instagram page, every single Tuesday we post a new IGTV video, which is a behind-the-scenes look at what's happening here at MSOTD Rocks. And every single Wednesday at 9 p.m. Central on Instagram, we go live, and it's an hour you talk to us, and just whatever happens, happens. It's always a fun time. Please also subscribe to this YouTube channel, because not only are you going to get these album reviews, you also get many different videos, such as our year-end awards, which you can go check out from 2020, 2019, and 2018. You also get different videos about emerging bands in the scene today, different top 10 lists, more album reviews, and of course the Kevin Figures Out series, where I try and figure out if I like certain bands or not. This year I've already done Diamante, Spirit Box, and Paris, so I've done a good range. And this is also where the Chord Progression podcast lives. It is our very own podcast where we're interviewing all the bands in the scene that are upcoming emerging, and sometimes we've interviewed some even bands that have arrived, like Bill Champlin, former Chicago member. From Ashes to New, we've interviewed the guitarist Lance, we've interviewed Throw the Fight, Kill the Lights. We even interviewed Ascent Like Wolves, which came out on the 17th of February, right before this album was due on the 19th. So go check that out. I got to talk to their lead singer, Nick, well, one of their lead singers, Nick, I should say, and we just had a fantastic time going through this whole entire album. So go check that out. You can find that interview right here on YouTube, or you can listen on Spotify, Podcast, Google Play, and iHeart Radio. Link subscription below for everything. So like, share, subscribe, tell your friends. Now let's go. Now let's take a look at the background for Ascent Like Wolves. Their last full album release was called Frigid Future, which came back out in 2016. This is accompanied by a run of shows over in Asia, China, Japan, South Korea, and this album was actually the highest selling metalcore album for Tower Records Japan until the year 2018, so that's pretty dang cool. They even released the Spirit Vessel EP back in March of 2018, and the song Angel Rad featured Rio from Crystal Lake on that song, so go check that out as well. In 2019, they end up reissuing their first album, And the Story Goes, with some other features such as Ricky Amarillo from Ice Night Kills and Franz from Attila. Now in 2021, they're coming out with the album Mystic Auras, and this features different guest spots from bands like Currents, Era, and Make Them Suffer. And when it really comes down to the theme of this overall album, what this theme is to look at is a concept that seems to uncover the things that we desire the most and why we are drawn to them, such as different statuses with a socioeconomic sense, things about depression, things about stigmas on mental illness, and of course, deconstructing personal intimate relationships. So enough with that, let's just talk about this album in full. Let's go. So let's start with the composition, construction, and instrumentation of Mystic Auras. And with this being a metalcore album, of course, I'm curious to see where they're going to go off with this. And the band really didn't focus in on that heavy, brutal metalcore sense like a lot of other metalcore bands did. No, they focused on a little bit more of a lighter sense, a little bit lighter distortion. And a good way to describe this is a lot of inspiration, I think, came off of the Architects 2018 album Holy Hell, because yes, there's going to be the heavier aspects to it. There's going to be the harder hits on the drums and the harder sounds on the bass guitar, but on the lead guitar, you're going to hear a little bit more of those higher distortions, a little bit more of those sonic distortions at the same time as well, to give this an overall lighter feel. And when you really break it down, this does make a lot of sense for the style to mix with that concept album that they're going for, because bringing in more of this melancholic Architects, I should say, kind of sound really does work out well to bring forward that theme, really let you think and let it sink into you. And this also allows them to really focus in on some of the heavier, more classic metalcore stylings and see how they play off with the style. So they really did a good job here picking that out and really being influenced by it, by also creating a different, heavier sound along with that lighter guitar style from that Architects Holy Hell inspiration. Now, were there some problems that I thought arose? And yeah, I think sometimes it arose where they relied on this just a little too heavily with that Architects inspired inspiration on the guitars. And when they really focus in on that tone heavily, they end up creating a great bass sound. Don't get me wrong, their core sound of this is absolutely fantastic. However, the bass at times stays rather prevalent, and when they mix in different pieces of influence, you really don't deviate from them heavily. And there are times where, again, the balance is great, but it feels like some of these songs kind of run together in a way. They're still really well constructed, but again, the overall tone of the album, it feels like at times it's like, okay, going from one to the next, it's like, okay, you might be going from the same kind of style to the same kind of style overall. So it's a little bit of a, mixed bag here. Taking a look at some examples, let's jump into the song Telephone first. And when I take a look at that one, the instrumental construction here is one that really creates this innate feel of depression, building with that consistent, slightly higher pitched architect style sound. And this absolutely works out well because they end up building this well throughout the verse, to start with the heavier drum beat in the bass line that then builds into this larger and grander guitar style overall. The style really built on that depression from Misconnection and how it comes out in you. So this guitar tone really does work out well for a song like Telephone. It's one of my favorites on the album. Also in Aquamarine, when we get to the chorus, I absolutely love what they do here. When you take a listen to the chorus in Aquamarine, the drums are rather stagnant, but they are very filled up with the fills, and the guitar plays this higher pitch, again, architect style sound similar to Holy Hell. And what really sets it apart from the rest is the song's pacing overall, because the pacing keeps it more of that emo kind of feel in ways where it's a little bit faster, but it's not necessarily brutally fast, or it's not really super slow at the same time as well. And this is a real throwback feel, and they nail mixing that in with that architect-inspired inspiration on the guitars and the metalcore sound at their core. This actually really worked out well. I was a big fan of this. Then we have to go to Deja Vu, and this one again I thought really heavily relied on that architect style inspiration, and this is where I kind of got lost with it. And the reason is because the structure of the song is really good, and it was a deviation from the rest of the norm of this album overall. But the sound ended up being really run together on this one overall. They did go harder with some of the unclean parts on this one, especially with the overall instrumentation, like in the bridge. And that was absolutely fantastic, but the rest of the song just really lacked that creative mixture that the bridge had. So again, you're going to get some hit and miss on here, mostly hits though instead of a miss. Overall though, on the composition, construction, instrumentation on Mystic Auras, When Ascent Like Wolves really focused on more of that architect-inspired sound. For the most part, it was good because it helped really bring forward the themes of the overall sound of just really taking a look at the concept of figuring out why we desire these certain things and really figuring out what it is that we desire. So really understanding that, bringing out that architect style tone really did work out well to really bring that forward, especially more in a metalcore sense. Now there were times that they relied on that and it really did work out well, like on Telephone and Aquamarine. However, in a song like Deja Vu, where most of the verse and the chorus kind of ran together in a way, yeah, we're going to get a couple of those in there where it's just not the overall best. However, when it comes to the overall composition, construction, instrumentation on this, the metalcore sound really does work out well with that architect-inspired inspiration from the guitar tone to really let this album pop in terms of overall construction when it comes to hitting on that message of the concept. Now it's time to go to the vocals, and when I talked to Nick about this album on the Chord Progression podcast, he told me that when it comes to vocals between him and his brother, that they both do it and they're both varied throughout the whole entire album. And this absolutely stunned me because you take a listen to Mystic Auras and it literally sounds like they only have one vocalist. These guys are able to really match their styles up so well that you can't tell which one is which. And that is an absolute win for this band because you're able to trade off different vocalists, you're able to play off different strengths, but it's going to still sound like one whole person at the exact same time. This was absolutely incredible. I couldn't believe that this was actually the case. But when it comes to the brothers of Nick and Alex singing, I'm going to take a look at 4 of the 8 songs that did not include features because I'll go over those in a little bit. But when you really take a look at this, just the way their unclean and clean vocals really match up with the overall instrumentation, what this really did was it really let the band just flow. It really let these concepts and these themes just really hit with more of an emotional tone. They really worked this out well here, but let's go to some of the examples. First example, I'll start out with a song called Eastern Front. When I take a look at this one, especially with the vocals, they end up mixing between this clean, unclean, depending on the heaviness of the overall instrumentals, and they're mixing unclean verses in 1 and clean in verses 2. Just before getting to the chorus, really creates this full-on dynamic track that really does work out well in the overall end. And then, of course, my favorite song, Telephone. This one was the one that stood out to me the most in this, just because the tone of the clean vocals really brought that feeling of this depression taking over you. But then with the unclean vocals bringing that anger that comes through dealing with that, and varying the overall tone of the clean vocals as well, just really let this kind of come out. And someone who's gone through something like this, yeah, this really does speak volumes to me. So this is why I really connect with the song so much. Telephone is fantastic. Taking a look at Aquamarine as well, another one of my favorite tracks from Mystic Auras, they end up bringing in more of this chant style in the beginning to give the song a harder feel just from the start, just a completely different feel, and I absolutely love it because it evokes a completely different emotion right from the get-go. They bring in more of this melancholic and heavier emo style vocal through the rest of the song, and it gives the feel of desire to really better the world around us, but that chant in the beginning really lets it set up fantastically, so I was a big fan of this. Now let's get to the features, because these features are interesting. When it comes to the features, we're taking a look at features from bands like Era, Novelist, and Currents. And I liked all three of these on these songs as well when they were featured, just because what the band was able to do was they were able to use these featured vocalists and really look at them and put them in the bridge and the breakdown of a lot of these songs. And with the way that the unclean vocals from Nick and Alec are constructed, they're not going to be nearly as strong, nearly as visceral, nearly as raw as some of these other guys in the scene can get. But adding these featured vocalists in there just to add that power to it overall really made these songs really hit with a harder and much more impactful vigor that just really just stands out amongst all the other songs as well. Just adding those vocalists, the male vocalists I should say, really does work out well here for them. However, they also added one where Buka from Make Them Suffer was on a track. This was the one that concerned me the most, not because Buka was on it, but because of how she was used. When it comes to Buka from Make Them Suffer on one of these tracks, I actually talked to Nick about this, and from my standpoint, it was just tough to really get into this one, but it was not because of Buka's inclusion, it was because of the construction around it and how she was used. Because in the second chorus where Buka was mixing with the clean vocals, she was more of this like complementary style of her vocal. Think similar to Jen Ledger of Skillet on how she used her vocals with Skillet and John Cooper as the lead. However, I was thinking that for the parts of the chorus, they should have gone with this more competing duet style overall with the vocals, with Buka staying out with an overall larger volume. This way, this song would have had a completely different feel, and this song would have stood out amongst the rest because the female vocal from Buka would have been so powerful, but you would have had this contracting vocal from either Nick or Alex that really would have just played off with it well and really just contrasted the styles. This could have really stood out as a huge positive in my mindset. I know a lot of people are going to like this. For myself though, I'm like, it just seems like it was a missed opportunity on how Buka's vocals could have really contrasted against Nick and Alex. Overall though, when it comes to the vocal standpoint, when it comes to Nick and Alec, man, they just really did a great job with this, just really creating this overall full feel to a lot of these songs. When it came down to it with the male inclusions of the features from guys like Currents, Era, and Novelist, this really did work out well because they gave the songs that extra raw vigor, especially in the bridge and the breakdown, that we didn't see from these guys, but it worked out so well because it gave these songs a lot more power, a lot more vigor, a lot more energy to really bring out the anger and trying to figure out why we desire the things that we do. Buka's inclusion on this though, again, I love the way her vocals sound against Nick and Alex, but it's just the way that it's constructed. Just, I wish Buka would have been a lot more featured on this one. That's my biggest issue with this. But, you know, for vocal styles, this is still pretty good. So when it comes to the themes and the styles of songs and how they connect, again, what Ascent Like Wolves looked to do with Mystic Auras was look to take a deep look into what are the things that we desire the most in life and why do we desire them. So they really took a look at things such as socioeconomic status quo, depression, the different stigmas around mental illness and why we look to try and break those and why we have those preconceived notions around them, along with deconstructing different personal relationships as well to really understand those. When you take a look at the songs though, I love what Ascent Like Wolves did on this because instead of keeping it more direct, they kept it a lot more abstract, but not too abstract. When you take a look at the lyrics, they're not going to be super direct where they're deriving a lot of this stuff off of personal experience and really just giving more of a storytelling mode from what they went through, but they're not going super duper abstract as well. You're getting lost throughout the whole entire song. You're not sure necessarily where they're going with. They end up creating this lyric kind of as a guide and a subject to like walk you hand in hand through the song. However, they kept it more abstract so that you latch on the emotion of what they're trying to talk about and relate it to yourself, rather than something specific that they're trying to talk about, a specific event or a specific time. And I really like this because it really lets you understand what the instrumentals were doing. So I absolutely loved how this did work out. Telephone is an absolute great example of this because Nick says the song is more about that misconnection and miscommunication we have with people today. And I took it in the same light, but more the really like misconnection with relationships and different conversations that we are having because a lot of us are using dating apps at this point. So again, just the overall theme and the overall emotion behind the theme is really what connects here. However, the specifics are a lot broader. This is what I really liked about this. But does the music and the styling of the songs really reflect the overall theme of the album? And I have to say yes, and the biggest reason behind that is because really focusing in with that Architects-inspired inspiration on the guitar tone, a little bit more that layer distortion with the metalcore. Yeah, the metalcore is going to be hard. It's really going to drive us into it. It's really going to hit us hard, but that lighter tone allows us to really sink into this, really listen to the words, and the difference between clean and unclean vocals and being a little bit more parody and really focusing a little bit more on the clean vocals at times as well, really did work out well. Plus, the male feature on this, when you really needed something to really just bring out the anger, the rawness, and the vigorous, and just kind of talking about some of these different topics like socioeconomic status quo, depression, and deconstructing relationships, where we're just coming to that boiling point and we just need to just scream, we just need to let all the emotion out. Those parts really did work out well here. So overall, I absolutely love this move. So yes, themes and styles, oh yeah. Alright, now time for my overall rating for Mystic Auras by Scent Like Wolves, and it is... I'm going to give Mystic Auras a 6.5 out of 10. So 6.5 out of 10, what I like about this album, and of course the first thing I like is the dedication to the overall concept, because the way the songs were constructed, especially with the vocals and with the lyrics, again, they never were too specific, a little bit more abstract, really let you connect with the emotion, really put the specifics within yourself. They didn't walk you hand in hand through everything, but they walked with you as a guide through that emotion so that you could really relate to it with yourself. And the instrumental styles and how these songs sounded really did work out with this as well. When it comes to the sound of this album, I really like that they didn't go super duper heavy with the metalcore all the time on this one. I like they kept a little bit more lighter with that, you know, Architects inspired inspiration sound, so it wasn't too pulse pounding, too pressing on you. It was a little bit, you know, lighter at the same time. But when they did go with that heavy pulse pounding sound, especially on the featured songs with the male vocalist from Novelist Era and Currents, this really did work out well, because when you needed that just raw, amped up extra piece to just blast you in the face with what you were trying to go with that emotion, with that anger, with just that, you know, I'm trying to figure out the best word, just that explosion of emotion, this really did work out well. One of the big things I like about this album was the song Telephone, and when I take a look at the song Telephone, it was probably my favorite of the whole entire album. The construction of this track is just absolutely beautiful every step of the way. They really keep the heaviness of the track overall with that bass guitar and the drums really focusing on this heavier, harder sound. However, is what the guitars really makes it stand out, because they go with that Architect-inspired style. You really play with a lower pitch overall instead of that really higher pitch, more, you know, sonic kind of sound at the same point. And this really helps us play the emotion that we are missing this genuine connection, and why we focus on convenience in relationships rather than actual raw human connection. This really does stand out as well. And the vocal construction here is an absolute key to how this song is successful, because in the first verse of this song, you know, it's a lower, cleaner vocal than normal, which is at the base more of a darker subject matter. So this does work out incredibly well, again, with the overall theme. But when we jump right into the higher pitched clean vocals throughout, which make me wonder, you know, why are we lacking this connection? Again, very understandable on how the song works out overall to really match up with the overall emotion. But then they also need unclean vocals for this one, and they absolutely nailed it in the second verse to really bring forward this breakdown and really bring forward the frustration and anger that comes through that lack of connection, just because we're constantly trying to create relationships just through our phones. When it comes to the ending of this album, Scent Like Wolves really need to find something that's just going to send us forward with this absolutely fantastic bang, just really set us apart and really send us into the future. And Aquamarine absolutely hits on this. When you take a look at the sound, they went back to this Architects-inspired sound and brought more of this dynamic construction to the drum. And this was played more of a fill style as well. And I absolutely love this, because a lot of the songs have more energy from the get-go, and then this album, of course, on more of an upbeat note. This sort of lighten up the song, of course, in the chorus, but they add more of this emo vibe to it all at the same time with that lighter sound instrumentation compared to the beginning of the song. And this is an absolutely cool move. Do not get me wrong. I love how they do this. And that's because we are leaning into the bridge, which ends up taking more of this drive-in sound on the beat to create this chant feel that we need, or really take a look at our own desires, our own wants, and figure out why we want them. Great way to end the song and the album. Okay, if I liked certain things, but a 6.5 out of 10, that's not perfect. What wasn't I a big fan on this album? And of course, one is Dissolve, and that is the one that featured Buka on there. And the biggest reason was because with Buka's female vocals, I was expecting something to really stand out, especially with a different female tone on the vocal set. And where I got disappointed with this was because in the chorus, they really didn't let Buka be more of that powerhouse and really take charge of the song. It was the other way around, and it just really didn't work out well here, just due to the fact that I wish that Buka's powerful vocals would have just really gave this sonic feel to the song, and it could have been one of the best on the record. She wasn't used poorly in the song, but I think it was just a huge missed opportunity overall. Also, take a look at Deja Vu as one of my dislikes on this one, because it was probably the toughest song on Mystic Auras for me to get through. The inconsistent song structure is a huge plus on this one, but the clean vocals primarily make this song sound like a softer version of a very classic Architect style song. And this made the song lose a lot of potential dynamic and the power that we had if we would have had the unclean vocals used even in this rather sparingly. And I did like how they used the unclean vocals from Mateo to really give this song a greater force behind it. However, man, it could just use so much more of that. It just was really lacking that. It kind of had more monochromatic feel up until we got to Mateo's inclusion and really had these unclean vocals full on in there. One thing I wasn't the biggest fan of was I do understand why they went with that heavy Architect-inspired sound, but there were points in time where I thought they did this a little bit too much with that guitar tone. They did switch certain things up with the guitar tones by bringing a little more of a heavier tone as well, like on Telephone, which I really did like. But for my ear, again, a lot of times I'm constantly hearing this Architect-inspired style thing, and again, at times it makes some of these songs just run together a little bit. It isn't the worst thing in the world, do not get me wrong, but when I'm really diving into these songs deep and really going in heavy on these, this is going to be something that really stands out to me as maybe okay, you guys maybe put a little bit too much into this. It's not bad, but it's not going to make it super duper transcendent like Architects had done with it, because it was Architects. Overall, when it comes to this album, though, for my final thought, I think it sounded like Wolf should be very proud of this one. When it comes to the overall concept of figuring out what our innate desires are and really figuring out why we want them, it makes absolute sense to really focus on that concept of both more of an abstract tone and really let us follow along with the emotions, but relate everything much more to our own lives to really understand the whole entire full of the album. And they were able to really take charge in that with the emotion by not focusing again on the brutal metalcore, and more of this lighter style too with the guitars, more of that Architects-inspired style. And it didn't always work out, but for the most part, it absolutely did. Using the different featured vocalists at the same time as well, especially the male vocalists to add that raw, visceral power to it, worked out fantastically. Buka, on the other hand, again, her vocals were fantastic, but I think she could have been used in a much different way in the construction song to really make this stand out. Now, when it comes to listening to Mystic Auras, I talked to Nick about this, and this is the best way to listen to it. When you get it, at nighttime, go for a drive, play the whole entire thing, and get lost in it. You will absolutely fall in love with this album if you do it, because even after writing my full review of it, that's what I did, and yeah, that's the way to go. That's going to be for me today. Guys, thank you for watching this album review. My name is Kevin. This has been our review of Mystic Auras from MSOTD Rocks. I'm going to end it with the hat flip. Nope, so see ya!